Welcome back to Geek Channel 8, GC8, the podcast of movie geeks. This week on the show, from 1975, there goes the shark meter, the granddaddy of all shark movies, Jaws.
In relationship to this movie in particular, there is a wonderful artist by the name of Lemon Demon. If you love geeky stuff, you should definitely check him out. And whether you've seen or not seen the movie Jaws, you should check out his song, Jaws. Very much on, it's a little on the nose, but it's actually really good. The other one I would recommend right off the bat is the Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny. I think that one will really scratch your geeky itch. Honestly, my kid introduced me to them, and I'm like, wow, this sounds like somebody I would have been listening to with my friends. But to be fair, my kid's really into our music as nostalgia. Yeah. So, I mean, they like that old
so
stuff,
relate.
That old stuff like They Might Be Giants and stuff. So anyway, yeah, that's like a perfect example. If you like They Might Be Giants, you'll probably like Lemon Demon. And Lemon Demon has a song specifically, Jaws, which is about the movie. It's very much on the nose, and yet it is really good. So I recommend that. And the other song by them that people might know this one, which is the Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny. I'm probably saying that wrong, but it's really good.
I've been really busy with a lot of things, so I haven't had much time to sit down and watch much besides our movies. So I'm just going to mention the fact that Rob and I just saw Cage the Elephant in concert, and it was awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Young the Giant was one of the openers. They were really good. It was a great show. It was my first time going down to Riverbend in Cincinnati in like a couple of years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a great time. We had pavilion seats, which was nice. We didn't have to, we're older now. We don't really like sitting on the
You're
grass
young,
like
man.
that. Yeah, we'll get a chair and we're good with that. It's fine. Yeah. So that it was a lot of fun. We took my bonus daughter, his daughter Sydney, out for her birthday. And it's kind of nice having young adult children because, and also being cool parents who, like cool music and then,
Yeah.
you raise your kids listen to this stuff and then they like it too. And this was actually the second time Rob and Sydney had seen Cage the Elephant together. The last time it was at Bogart's, which was a much
Oh,
smaller venue.
oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am glad that my friends have kids because one of my friends' daughters turned him on to this band called Cage the Elephant when they
Heck
had
yeah.
one album out, I think, only one. And then he bought that album for me, figuring I would like it. And I did. Shout out to Bear, or actually shout out to Sophia, who turned me on to Cage the Elephant. But basically, I don't have kids. I am a kid.
That's
The
right.
fun uncle. You're the funkle.
I guess so. I still like going to the comic book store, and it's summer. I went to Free Comic Book Day and picked up Discovery. The Discovery Channel actually puts out comic books. I did not know that.
Oh,
And this year's was the top 10 deadliest sharks. There are comics in here, but I haven't read the comics yet. I only got as far as the first page where they reveal one of the top 10 deadliest sharks. And on their list, it ranks at number 2, the great white.
oh,
Okay.
And there's some great white facts. The average size of a great white shark, according to Discovery Comics' Deadliest Sharks comic, is 18 feet. The largest recorded is 21 feet. The habitat is coastal and offshore waters, which have water temperatures between 54 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Their preferred prey is tuna, rays, other sharks, dolphins, porpoises, whales, seals, sea lions, sea turtles, sea otters, and seabirds. So basically anything big, they'll eat it. When a great white attacks, its eyeballs roll back into its head to protect them from injury. The back of a great white is gray or blue, fading to a white underbelly. This coloring helps the shark blend into the sea bottom, camouflaging it from its prey. I like this next fact. Great whites have triangular-shaped teeth with serrated edges, about 3 inches long. They have about 3,000 teeth in their mouth, arranged in several rows. 3,000 teeth. Okay, let me repeat that. 3,000 teeth that are 3 inches long.
Yeah, that's a big nope.
Attack file. Recorded attacks 352. Unprovoked fatalities 65.
Ooh.
So basically 1 in 6 chance you're going to die if you get attacked by a great white.
Wait. Unprovoked fatalities. So
that means yes. They excluded people who were stupid.
Well, there's that.
You know, shark attacks are like what? It's Florida's the main place.
Yeah, I think provoked attacks fatality is probably 100%.
There is a creature alive today who has survived millions of years of evolution without change, without passion, and without logic. It lives to kill. A mindless eating machine. It will attack and devour anything. It is as if God created the devil and gave him jaws. This is Universal's extraordinary motion picture version of Peter Benchley's best-selling novel, Jaws.
I just found out that a girl got killed here last week, and you knew it. You knew there was a shark out there. You knew it was dangerous, but you let people go swimming anyway.
You yell barracuda. Everybody says, huh? What? You yell shark. We've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July.
Is it true that most people get attacked by sharks in 3 feet of water, about 10 feet from the beach?
Yeah. What we are dealing with here is a perfect engine, an eating machine.
We're not only going to have to close the beach, we're going to have to hire somebody to kill the shark.
Bad fish. But I'll catch him and kill him.
Did you hear your father? Out of the water now!
This shark, swallow you whole. You're gonna need a bigger boat.
That's a 20-footer.
25. 3 tons on them.
Hurry up, he's coming straight for us. Don't screw it up now. Don't wait for me. Now! Shoot! What's the deal? Give him room! I can't, he's trying to run! Oh! Come quick! I can't hold it! Hurry! Take it up! Hurry! Everybody out of the water!
None of man's fantasies of evil can compare with the reality of Jaws. Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, Richard Dreyfuss, Jaws. See it before you go swimming.
I was a child when this movie came out, and My father took me to this movie.
Wow.
I was a very
All
young
right.
child.
There
My
it is.
sister was a year younger than me. She was in it too. She apparently jumped into his lap in the beginning and never got out of his lap. I apparently, he said, dug a hole into his hand with my thumb during the course of this film. If that wasn't bad enough, we then proceeded to go on vacation in Martha's Vineyard, which is where this film was shot and also where the shark that attacked that this was based on happened. And I think he proceeded to push our inner tube out into deep waters and then overturn it, like while making the dun 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 sound.
Wow, that's like
That would be child abuse by modern standards, but you know, Gen X grew up the hard way.
Yeah, we did.
oh my gosh. Talk about it's like you know what will make these kids stronger. Yeah, that'll
You
make
know
them
what'll
stronger.
build character?
There's a podcast by Dave Anthony and Gareth Reynolds called The Dollop. They did an episode called The New Jersey Shark Attacks. Definitely recommend that podcast to our listeners if you're into sharks, because it tells the story of the real shark that Jaws is based on. But that is another time, another place, another discussion. First, let's go back to when I was a child and get a background to the year 1975. Anyone?
No, I got it. So 1975, which I was a year old. So, and my parents were not as liberal about that kind of thing. Now, they did take me to Star Wars when that came out. I do remember my parents talking about Jaws, like when they saw it. It was such an impactful film for so many people of our parents' generation because it was the first blockbuster ever. It was the highest grossing film of all time.
It actually is the movie that for which blockbuster was coined, I believe. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. That being said, talking about, what was going on in 1975. Well, the British Conservative Party chooses its first woman leader, Margaret Thatcher. The Vietnam War ended.
Wait a minute. Margaret Thatcher was British Prime Minister in 1975?
No. She became their first party leader, their first female party leader.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
If you were going to say that she became the prime minister, I was going to be like, oh, well.
Spoiler alert, she does eventually. But not yet. But she was well on the path to become,
The
But
U.S. is, of course, had a female vice president for a while now, for 4 years, So
yeah, for 4 whole years. I mean,
Yeah.
we're totally with the times. It's amazing,
Okay, back to 1975.
Yeah, back to 1975. The U.S. carries out Vietnam Operation Baby Lift, bringing Vietnamese orphans to the U.S. Sony introduces Betamax videotapes, and Matsushita/JVC introduces the VHS. Patty Hearst becomes most wanted and is arrested for armed robbery. The Suez Canal reopens for the first time since the Six-Day War. The unemployment rate in the U.S. reaches 9.2%, and recession is recognized by President Ford. Britain's inflation rate jumped 25%. The film version of The Who's Tommy premieres in London. Saturday Night Live debuted on NBC.
Let's talk about Jaws specifically. Universal Pictures producers Richard Zanuck and David Brown bought the rights to Jaws in 1973, which was before it was even published, for about $175,000, which would be $1.2 million today, adjusted for inflation.
Wow.
Spielberg read the studio's copy of the unpublished novel, which was lying around the office, and thought it was similar to his 1971 television film Duel. He said that they were both dealt with these, quote, these leviathans targeting everymen, unquote. But he was worried about getting typecast as the, quote, truck and shark director, unquote. I don't know how you could, like, nobody in the history of the world has been typecast as the truck and shark director, but okay, Spielberg was worried about that. Brown told Spielberg, quote, "After Jaws, you can make all the films you want," unquote. He said he liked the shark hunt in the last 120 pages, but said, quote, "I'd like to do the picture if I could change the first 2 acts and base the first 2 acts on an original screenplay, and then be true to the book for the last third." The producers had a deal with Peter Benchley that he could write the first draft of the screenplay, which they agreed to mainly because at the time there was a looming writer's strike and Benchley wasn't in the union, so that worked out great for them. He wrote 3 drafts before handing it off to Spielberg. Spielberg wanted to make it a little less grim, and he asked a comedy writer, Carl Gottlieb, to punch it up. And Gottlieb, who auditioned for the role of Meadows, the local news reporter in the film, he was hired for 1 week of dialogue polishing, and he became the main screenwriter, and he rewrote almost the whole script during the course of the shoot. Each night he had dinner with the cast and crew, and the actors would improv over dinner, and later that night Gottlieb would write the script for the next day's scenes, incorporating the stuff that they had ad-libbed into it. According to Spielberg, Quint's monologue about the Indianapolis, which we'll talk about later, was a collaboration between Sackler, John Milius, who we've talked about on the show before. John Milius is the screenwriter behind like Conan and Rambo and Dirty Harry. He is basically the guy that Walter Sobchak from The Big Lebowski is based on. That dude, who also worked on the script, and the actor Robert Shaw, who plays Quint, but he gave most of the credit to Milius, but Gottlieb gives more credit to Shaw than Milius. Whatever the case is, John Milius, Robert Shaw, those guys probably had the biggest influence on that particular dialogue scene. 9 days before they were supposed to start production, neither Quint nor Hooper had been cast. The producers approached Robert Shaw, but he was reluctant, but both his wife and his secretary wanted him to do it. And he said, quote, "The last time they were that enthusiastic was From Russia with Love, and they were right," unquote. So Shaw based his performance on Craig Kinsbury, who is an actual local fisherman on Martha's Vineyard, and he can actually be seen in the movie as the fisherman Ben Gardner. So that guy that plays Ben Gardner is who Quint is based on. The plan was originally to use a trained shark until they realized you can't actually train a great white shark.
That was presumptuous.
Yeah. So 3 full-size mechanical sharks had to be built.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess they were just like, of course, we'll just get a trained shark.
yeah. I mean, everybody's doing it.
That sounds like something like, some drinking, cocaine, something was involved there. Where
I think maybe
that was
you're
part
right.
of the plan. Like, yeah, train shark. Right? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Boom. Brilliant. Yeah, no, you had to be a little high for that.
Let's keep in mind that Spielberg was like 25 when he made this, so there was probably a lot of partying going on.
It was the 70s. Everybody was partying back then.
Oh yeah. Jaws was the first major motion picture to actually be shot on the ocean.
Wow.
Leading to all sorts of predicaments that resulted from the film going way over budget, eventually reaching $9 million. Principal photography was scheduled for 55 days, ended up taking actually 159 days.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's way, way over.
That's more than triple.
Most of the cases, I guess if you're not Spielberg, somehow he has that magic, because in most cases the studio would say, screw it, you're off the film. We're going to send in our, some guy we know is reliable and can do this, and you're out.
Yeah, they really wanted him on this one, though, didn't they? I mean, just from the beginning. Once you do this.
He must be really charming.
And how much did he have under his belt at that point? I mean, obviously Duel, which is, very cool, but like, what else did he have under his belt?
He might have had the Sugarland Express. Was that before or after this? Bunch of television. Of course, he had done stuff for Night Gallery and Columbo and stuff like that. Yeah, the Sugarland Express was the previous year, which I think did okay. But anyway, yeah, I agree with Rosie. He must be really charming or something. Yeah. So in addition to the problems the ocean caused, like passing boats in the shots, the salt water corroded the metal sharks. You know, they would get tangled in the seaweed. Everybody got seasick. Gottlieb was nearly decapitated by the boat's propellers. Dreyfus got trapped in the steel shark cage. Shaw frequently fled to Canada during the shoot due to tax problems. He was evading the IRS.
Wow.
If you can believe it, he engaged in binge drinking, and he held a grudge against Richard Dreyfuss. Spielberg later calculated that during the entire 12-hour daily work schedule, on average, only 4 hours were spent actually filming. The editor, Verna Fields, rarely had material to work with during principal photography because, according to Spielberg, quote, "We would shoot 5 scenes in a good day, 3 in an average day, and none on a bad day," unquote. Okay, so John Williams composed the film's score. It's arguably even more famous than the movie itself. It won an Oscar, a Grammy, a BAFTA, and a Golden Globe. It pretty much swept the awards. Jaws recouped its production cost in just 10 days. In 59 days, it passed the $100 million mark, which was unheard of at the time. By day 78, it overtook The Godfather as the highest grossing film in North America. It was the #1 film for 14 weeks. It would go on to become the highest grossing film of all time until Star Wars came out 2 years later. Jaws won 3 Academy Awards: Best Film Editing, Best Original Dramatic Score, and Best Sound. It's also been nominated or won awards too numerous to name. So that's the background going into this film.
Here's a choice of food and drink to satisfy anyone and everyone. You'll find something to please you to add to your evening's enjoyment. Something to please all tastes and age groups.
You might think that I would have chosen Narragansett Lager for this, since people are seen drinking that in this. But I did not. Quint, when he says he'll catch the shark, he says he'll do it, but he wants, what was it, like $10,000 or something?
Yeah.
And 2 cases of apricot brandy.
Yeah. Because once I do it, I'm going to drink myself silly. Okay.
I decided that I needed to make some apricot brandy.
Wow.
I found Alton Brown.
He's a righteous nerd. He's up there, man.
Yeah. For those who aren't familiar, he's on the Food Network. He had a show called Feasting on the Waves. I thought, what better person? He actually has a recipe online on his site, which is altonbrown.com, for Orca apricot brandy.
Oh, wow.
On the nose.
Yeah.
Here for it.
He said, tart, fresh apricots and sweet apricot jam combined in this balanced, complex brandy I made in honor of the 40th anniversary of Jaws. If I have to explain, well, then you've got some movie to watch, eh, Chief? Enjoy this brandy straight up or in any number of classic cocktails like a golden sipper or a yellow parrot. All right, so he gives the recipe both in metric and U.S. standard. I'm going to give it in U.S. standard, but if you want the metric, you can get it. altonbrown.com.
Why? Because we're Americans and we will measure with anything but the metric system.
That's
Yes.
right, David.
Active time, 5 minutes. Total time, 7 days and 5 minutes. Yield 2.5 cups. All right. What you're going to need: 5 ounces of dried apricots, chopped. 3 ripe apricots, quartered. I did not have access to ripe apricots. I can't get them here, so I used white peaches instead, which is close enough, I figured. 3 tablespoons of apricot jam, a half cup of water, and 18 fluid ounces of vodka. You place the water and jam in a microwave-safe container and heat on high for a minute. Stir, then heat again until the syrup mixture boils, which takes about 30 seconds on high. Meanwhile, place the ripe and dried apricots in a clean bottle or ball star mason jar. You pour the syrup over the apricots, then top with the vodka. Cover and allow to steep for 7 days at room temperature. Strain through cheesecloth and enjoy straight up or on any number of classic cocktails like Golden Slipper or Yellow Parrot. So, before we get into this, I got my bottle of homemade apricot brandy.
I love that.
And a glass. And
Tell me you ate that fruit.
Oh, yeah. There's some sediment down there, but I'm not worried about that.
I'm gonna do a toast. We should do a toast. We should do a toast.
All right.
Get your drink. Get your drink out.
Give me a sec here. Don't want to waste even a drop of that.
Pinky's out because Eric's fancy.
All right. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Cheers.
Cheers. I gotta say, this apricot brandy is awesome. So.
See, I don't know what I was thinking. I was like, the hardtack. That's what I was thinking. Because, that's like the number one. I'm like, the thing I think of when, in terms of the food, hardtack, then pretzels. But
tinned fish, maybe.
Chum would count. Yeah, I don't know. But the hardtack, I was like, wow, I should. Okay, I won't go on and on about the hardtack, but I will point out, if you're interested in a really good video on hardtack, he does Max at Tasting History. He does a great video on hardtack.
Okay.
I could go for a good shark steak right now, though, for real.
Oh, yeah.
You've never had a shark steak. So good.
Well, let's jump into this. So it opens. It's this New England beach town of Amity, and a young what's that?
Amity.
Yeah, Amity.
Mm-hmm.
A young woman goes for a late night ocean swim. She runs out, goes skinny dipping. Then an unseen force attacks and pulls her underwater. Her remains are found washed up on the beach the next morning. After the medical examiner concludes it was a shark attack, the newly hired chief of police, Martin Brody, closes the beach. The mayor Larry Vaughn, persuades him to reconsider, fearing the town's summer economy will suffer.
Because it's always about the dollars with these people.
Yep.
Always.
The coroner, apparently under pressure, basically concurs with the mayor's theory that it was a boating accident. He basically caves. Brody accepts their conclusion until a young boy, Alex Kittner, is killed at a crowded beach. At that point, a bounty is placed on the shark, causing an amateur shark hunting frenzy. There's a big, town meeting, and everyone's talking about this. There's this grizzled old seaman, Quint, and he rakes his nails down the chalkboard and gets everyone's attention. And he says that he'll offer his services for $10,000. He's a shark hunter. And they consult with oceanographer Matt Hooper, which is played by Richard Dreyfuss. And Hooper examines the girl's remains and confirms that it is an abnormally large shark.
When all the people show up to do amateur shark hunting, this one guy's like, I better catch something. That's my wife's holiday roast. Oh my God. And I was just sitting there thinking, God, I bet she hates him.
I like the cast of characters. I like that they set up regret. They said, but they got a crazy guy. The guy who's he's like, I'll do it. I know you guys are offering $6,000. That's not enough for me to risk my life. No, I'll find it for $6,000, but I'll bring it back for 10. and case whiskey or whatever. Anyway, but like,
no, that's like an afterthought. After as he's walking out, he's like, and 2 cases of apricot brandy.
Yeah.
Right. And then our main guy that Roy Schneider plays, he's like, we established he's scared of the water. He's not an islander. He's scared of the water. He's not into it. And he's ready to be like, yes, get out of the water. And they're like, no, you're overreacting. It's not really, no, don't, let's not, think about the business and stuff. And, which of course comes back to bite him later on.
Yeah, there's a bunch of misadventures with these amateur shark hunters. Like some are like on a pier at some point, like fishing off pier at night, and then like they end up hooking something and it tears the whole pier.
It tears the pier apart.
Yeah.
Just there goes the whole front end of it.
They get dragged out to sea on an Nantucket sleigh ride. Yeah. But some of these local fishermen eventually catch a shark. The shark. Quote unquote. The shark. It's a tiger shark. And Mayor Vaughn declares the beaches are safe. Hooper's a little skeptical. So he and Roy Scheider's character, Brody, sneak at night and they cut it open. And they determine that if it was the actual shark, it would still have human remains in it from the people that it's eaten. And there is no human remains. There's like a bunch of shit, like a license plate and stuff like that.
Yeah, license plate fell out of it.
Yeah, I'm like, what?
It's a good reminder that sharks will eat anything.
They're like living trash compactors of the sea.
I think that was actually a Chekhov's license plate. Yeah. Because, the idea that they'll eat anything was important to establish.
So they go out at night on Hooper's boat, Hooper and Brody, and they find a half-sunken boat of Ben Gardner. This is the local fisherman that's actually played by the real guy, who Quint is based off of. Hooper goes down in a scuba suit and check the hull, and he finds a large shark tooth embedded in it. But then Gardner's corpse rolls out in a classic Spielbergian jump scare, and he drops the shark's tooth. They lost their only proof. So Vaughn dismisses the idea that it's a great white shark and refuses to close the beaches, adds increased safety precautions and, has lifeguards on duty. But nevertheless, on 4th of July weekend, tourists stream in, packing the beaches.
And nobody's going in the water.
That's right.
Nobody's going in the water. So the mayor goes up and confronts his friend and he's like, hey, nobody's going in the water. Will you guys kind of go in? Because he knows if one person goes in, then other people will feel safe going into the water, surely. And that's exactly what happened. And then the chaos ensues because, as Dreyfuss's character mentioned earlier, the shark is attracted to the motions and the sounds that are made when humans are in the water. So chaos can only ensue at this point.
But it doesn't happen the way you think it does.
Nope.
There is a lagoon nearby, and the shark actually, rather than attacking the beachgoers, swims into this lagoon where it kills a boater.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes close to killing Brody's own son, who's there.
Right.
And then Brody gets pissed. And at this point, he insists that Vaughn hire Quint.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and for the first time chaos ensued, let's rewind back a little bit. It was a couple of kids that had a shark fin that were swimming around people, freaking them out. Right. But meanwhile, the real shit was happening over here in the lagoon.
Which, the hilarious thing is I'm like, oh yeah, so somebody with a shark fin is like a cartoon thing, right? But it happens in the original shark movie. It actually happens. So I'm like, wow, I guess that's where it comes from. Oh, I do want to mention something, jumping a little bit back. the shots of people from underwater, a weird kind of sexualization of women's legs underwater and the shark coming to them.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, was this start here? I'm like, no, probably not. Creature of the Black Lagoon probably did this too.
Yeah, I bet it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The woman that played the original swimmer who skinny dips is a stunt woman.
Oh.
Susan Backliney, she played Chrissy. And her main thing was she was willing to do nudity, and she wanted the part. She convinced Spielberg and the producers that if she was just a stunt woman, then they couldn't do close-ups, but if she got the actual role, they would be able to do close-ups without cutting away because she was playing the character herself. And they bought that, and so she got her biggest role, really. So hopefully she made a whole lot of money off that. So there's a bunch of tension between Quint and Hooper. Basically, you know, because one is the academic and the other is the, like, blue-collar guy, right? But Brody's kind of in between. They head out to sea on Quint's boat to hunt for the shark. And this part of the movie, some people find slow, but I think it's very realistic because it's a fishing movie. They're essentially fishing. So now comes the time when they're trying to, you know, wait until they catch something. Brody's like throwing chum in the water. And then there's this point where we finally see the shark. It appears and jumps out, and like they estimate that it's like 25 feet long and, you know, weighs 3 tons or something. This is where he backs up like in shock, and we get one of the most famous lines from this movie is like, "You're going to need a bigger boat."
Yep.
Nevertheless, they managed to harpoon it with a line that has flotation barrels attached to it, but the shark is too powerful. It pulls even the flotation barrels underwater.
The conflict between, you know, the college boy and the grizzled mariner, that was like really strong. Like, even though college boy should know what to do and follow orders, he wasn't following orders real great. And, you know, there's a lot of that. And so before we get to the night scene, we get that. And I think that was really, then you get to see sort of a resolution of that. So
I'll say that this is a dividing line between old Hollywood and new Hollywood. So you get the people like Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss who are going to become the new stars of Hollywood alongside of Robert Shaw, this old Hollywood star. And the new language of cinema is being developed still. So you have this John Williams score, which the dun 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 shark music is super famous, even more famous than the film. But he's also, there are parts of it, like when they're first heading out to sea, that the music is like this rousing, like 60s, like Disney adventure movie kind of music, you know?
Yeah.
And like that you would totally expect in like, you know, Swiss Family Robinson or like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea or something. So you can see where this is sort of the point where like the old Technicolor Hollywood epics ends and the modern, you know, highly polished blockbuster era begins.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're drinking and showing off their scars. It's a really manly sort of bonding scene.
Very manly. Yes.
And then Quint starts telling the story about the USS Indianapolis.
He's like, "Hey, want to hear my trauma? Here's my trauma."
For those who aren't familiar, the USS Indianapolis during World War II was torpedoed and tons of sailors ended up in the water, and it turned into a shark feeding frenzy. Now, this is where we get the first inkling that this is not just a job to Quint. Quint is on a mission here. And it becomes more apparent as things go on. And that's when I realized that this is a retelling of Moby Dick. Where Quint is basically Ahab. And instead of a great white whale, it's a great white shark. Like, that was the revelation I had when I saw this scene. Not the time I saw it when I was a child, but the next time I saw it, I'm like, oh, this is just Moby Dick retold. Really well, by the way.
I cannot remember what the number was he went in with, but I know it was well over 100 men, and then it ended up with like only 30 something survived, or it was some outrageous number that he started with, and it just like 36 men survived, and he was one of them, obviously. So yeah, he was a man on a mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of the story is I saw my buddy. Here's where he's from. This was his position. He played in baseball. He was really good, whatever. But anyway, he's floating there. He's like asleep because we're all bobbing around together. Reach over and wake him up, and he just kind of flips over, and the bottom half of him been bitten off. And then he goes, "That's why I haven't worn a life jacket since."
Yeah.
Now that was weirdly specific. That was really, I'm like, okay, I mean, I guess. I don't think he died because of the life jacket, but man, who am I to tell you how to process your trauma there? That's really messed up.
Yeah.
But, after this, they were very much more like tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, they bonded.
Definitely a bonding scene. Now, the USS Indianapolis was a Portland-class cruiser, and of the 1,196 crewmen aboard, only 316 survived.
Oh, okay. See, I was way off.
But now you're Croatia.
300 died during the sinking, and the other 579 died from exposure, dehydration, drinking salt water, and some from shark attacks. The majority of the dialogue in the film was largely written by Robert Shaw. The most major difference between Quint's account and the actual event was the date of the sinking, which in the film he said June 29th, 1945, but the actual ship was actually sunk a month later in July 30th.
Wow.
While this is all going on, the shark rams the hull of the boat and it disables the power. So now they're really screwed. They work all night repairing it, like bailing it, stuff like that. Brody attempts to call the Coast Guard on the radio, and this is how this is where for sure Quint's on a vendetta, because he basically smashes the radio. He doesn't want any assistance. This is like him versus the shark. He doesn't want any Coast Guard coming in and, getting involved. It turns into a chase where they follow the barrels, and Quint harpoons the shark with another barrel. They tie it to the stern cleats of the ship, and the shark drags the boat backward. Another Nantucket sleigh ride, basically. This causes the deck to flood, including the engine, and Quint's gonna sever the line when the back just breaks off. The barrels stay attached to the shark, and Quint decides they're gonna head for port, or at least shallower waters, when the engine fails.
Well, it doesn't just fail, because Dreyfus, who has seafaring experience, even this rich boy variety, Dreyfus is like, man, you gotta let off of it. You're gonna, because the engine's already damaged from earlier from the flooding. You got to let off, and you get. At this point, I feel like it's like, oh wait, Quint might actually be afraid. I don't know what he's doing. But it's not sensical. It's not like if you really want to give him the shallow waters, this is not going to do it. He's shot his shot. He's used all the tools he knows how to use, and it's not worked. So it's like he's just kind of madly, it's like he got the pedal to the metal, and he's just like, and it's like, dude, and sure enough, he blows the engine. It's like now they're totally buggered, and it's like, okay,
right? Like I done told you. Now here we are. This is great.
The boat starts to get bogged down with water. They decide they're going to have to try something else. Hooper basically gets into a shark cage. He's going to inject the shark with strychnine with a hypodermic spear gun. When he goes down, the shark attacks the cage and he drops the spear.
Immediately. Oh my God.
The shark basically destroys the hell out of this cage, and he ends up escaping out onto the seabed and totally unprotected. But the shark actually goes after the boat and makes it up onto the stern of the boat and eats Quint.
Yeah. Bites him right in half.
But not without a fight, damn it.
That's right.
Yeah.
He did not go down without a fight. That is for sure. He was Stabby McStabberson.
That's right. The big old choppy, stabby knife that he was going to use to cut off the lines earlier before they just pulled loose. Yeah, he uses that. And he stabs him all the way. As he's getting eaten, he's stabbing away. He's kicking. He's screaming. That he don't go down easy, man. Shark earned that particular meal. But
Yeah,
it wasn't.
But the shark's not through. The shark knows Brody's still left. Brody manages to shove a scuba tank into the shark's mouth, and he's got to climb all the way to the top of the crow's nest because everything else is going underwater. He shoots the scuba tank, blowing it up, killing the shark.
after many suspenseful tries.
Yes.
Which he had lost his glasses. So I'm going to point that out.
And he still got the shot.
Even though he's a cop and he was using a rifle, you think, oh, he could get it. Well, he'd already lost his glasses. So it was like a very good lucky shot at that point.
No glasses on a sinking ship, trying to balance himself on the crow's nest. Just amazing.
Yeah. After the shark's dead, Hooper resurfaces, and the two of them manage to swim back to the island by clinging to some barrels. And that's basically the end.
My only experience of Jaws before this was when I was a kid on the local Channel 19. We did, it was like, you could watch there were all actually a lot of great movies that were shown, with commercials, also cut for TV, blah, blah, blah. So I had a very vague idea, didn't remember it all, or most of it. This is a really great movie, I think. It holds up really well. All the steps required of humans screwing up and making bad choices for this thing to be a real threat are there. Okay, I love that.
Yeah,
it's they actually the time they spend with the characters, because it's funny because it's like, well, you were talking earlier about the screenwriting process, and they were like, well, we wanted to add something in the beginning before the shark hunt to make it less grim. It's like, man, all the mistakes they made, and they actually had a child devoured. I mean, that's not, even now you don't do that.
Alex
Right.
Gittner. Yeah.
I mean, all that stuff. Oh, there's a whole scene where the mother of the child comes out and says to Roy, the sheriff, you knew that there was a shark out there, killed this girl before, and you didn't stop, you didn't close the beaches then. And she smacks him. And they're like, oh, yeah.
and the mayor is standing right next to him. It's totally his fault, and he said nothing.
Well, no, he does say, she was wrong. She's wrong. And he's like, no, she wasn't wrong.
Right.
And we see him building this resolve because he's afraid of the water. He's come out here, got this job, and he has the entirety of all of the these people of the island people who say, we're Summertown, we count on this. The saying, all these, leaders of industry are telling you, no, don't shut down the beaches. And he sees what happens. Like, there's 3 people dead, like, including a child and nearly his own child. That almost happened too. And that's where he grows this resolve to go on a boat, even though he's terrified. And, it is kind of, I don't know, Eric, you could probably speak to this. It's in a classic adventure story, it's not necessarily the guy who's the expert hunter. It's the other guy.
Right.
Who just, who manages to survive and come back,
So I think a lot of times the expert hunter is usually at the end of their career and they impart some important knowledge to the main guy. But a lot of times it's like they know that they're on their last hunt. This is going to be the last one, Interesting thing about the kid, Alex Kintner is the name of the character of the kid. And the mother, Alex's mother, was played by a woman named Lee Fierro. And allegedly, decades after the film, she walks into a seafood restaurant and saw that there was the Alex Kintner sandwich on the menu.
Oh.
And she tells them that she was Alex Kintner's mother in the film. And then the manager of the restaurant comes out to meet her. The manager of the restaurant was Jeffrey Voorhees, who was the person who had played Alex Kintner in the movie. They hadn't seen each other since the movie.
Oh my gosh. What
Oh,
are the
what a
odds?
great reunion! Mom!
That's so funny.
You know, that makes it a lot less tasteless. I'm sure the sandwich was delicious, not tasteless, but you know what I mean. And, like, I can do this. I was him, okay? I got eaten in the movie. It's all right. Yeah, that makes a big difference there.
That's so funny. I just think it's funny that this takes place in Amity, and then how much longer after this movie did the Amityville Horror come out? You know, and then also, what are the odds of Alex Kintner being played by a Voorhees? Like, I just am keep making all of these horror movie connections.
Yeah, I thought maybe Jason Voorhees was named Voorhees in tribute to him. So it may be that they chose that name for that reason. I don't know.
Wow, what an interesting Easter egg that would be.
The Amityville Horror came out 2 years later.
Okay.
But since it was based on a real story, like a supposedly real haunted house, and that haunted house was in Amityville,
There's
right?
probably a lot of amenities. That's
that's my guess.
Yeah.
And I think this was Amityville and not that's the Amityville Horror, and I think this was just called Amity. But
yeah, I totally was like, what?
My brain still made the connection because
Absolutely.
that's how my brain works. And I'm just like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of bad things happen in eastern states. There's a lot of horror going on, man. Just saying.
It's because everything's built on native burial grounds. That's why Ohio is so messed up.
Oh, yeah.
Ohio is the brunt of so many memes for so many reasons. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's nice to get back to the classics sometimes, especially one that was so impactful like this one. I haven't seen Jaws in years, and honestly, it's not a genre I totally get into, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, I forgot that Richard Dreyfuss was in it, and at first when I saw him in the beginning, I was a little bit shocked because I'm used to seeing later stage middle-aged Richard Dreyfuss from the 80s, not young, head full of curly hair and a full beard looking kind of hot Richard Dreyfuss. So, yeah, I mean, even then he was a phenomenal actor. And I really enjoyed the chemistry of the cast, the way it was shot, how suspenseful they made things, the extra little things that they did to make you sit there on the edge of your seat like, come on, just freaking do it, is that's it for me. That's it for me. If a movie holds my attention and I walk away thoroughly entertained, it's a 10. This movie's a 10. How could it not be? It's a 10.
It is a 10. It is definitely a 10. This would top my list of one of the greatest films ever made. I have watched it multiple times and not, most recently I saw it in its re-release on the big screen this year because it's the, whatever anniversary,
It'll be 50 years next year.
Yeah, well, It was actually originally supposed to be released in 74. It was supposed to be released in Christmas time of 74, but they were behind on marketing it and everything because it went so long that they pushed it off until summer, which was at that time considered the dumping ground of movies.
Oh, wow.
Like they used to say, because nobody went to a movie in the summer, you went to the beach, or whatever.
Right.
Well, lo and behold, it did exceptionally well and started the trend of big budget summer blockbusters. From this point on, summer blockbusters would be a thing all the way up until really the present day, although we've been starting to get away from that. Like it seems like now, the Christmas season is a bigger time again, but for many, many years, especially the 80s, And
Oh,
the
yeah.
90s, the summer was the time for the big action movies and stuff like that.
This is something that watching, this handful of shark movies, it reminded me of something of that I had learned watching zombie movies. Or you can even, it's similar to what you can learn watching even superhero movies. It's never about the thing you think it's about. Shark's important. You got to have a good shark, but it's everything around it. Because they've obviously told this story many, many times since, but it was all the great actors. You described how they came up with all the ad libs and everything, the story, all the stuff leading up to it made the difference and made it so much more believable and impactful to me than the other ones. And it's the same thing. It's like, you can go back to the very first zombie movie that made a real impact, and most of that movie is not about the zombies, and it's never about the thing. It's always about the stuff around it that makes it great. And of course, we all know a great superhero movie, what's important? Well, maybe the superhero is important, but ultimately you need good villains. So we always, if you think it's about the thing, but like you got to have a good shark. Shark was amazing, but what really made it was all these people and the great writing and everything around it. I mean, writing, the music, the special effects, all this stuff. Same story. Told 1,000 times since then. Not a 10. This one, absolutely a 10. I wish I get my kid to watch it, but
but
it's not animated, so probably can't get them to watch it. We'll see. We'll see.
Someday.
So yeah, there's a lot of things that don't completely translate for modern audiences. Like I said, I think the barrel scene where they're trying to catch the shark is probably considered slow by modern standards. I think it's perfect because, like I said, they're fishing. Like anyone who's been fishing knows you spend a lot of time waiting for something to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually feel that long, in my opinion. There's also things like at one point Quint chugs a beer, crushes the can, and well, that's no big deal. Like people do that all the time nowadays. But it was much more badass for the time because back then beer cans were steel. They weren't aluminum like they are now or whatever, So, being able to crush one in one hand was a thing,
Very manly.
So much of modern cinema, especially action movies and horror movies, which Jaws is both of those things. People argue whether it is or not. I say it is. The timing, the jump scares, all that stuff comes out of this movie. A lot of the modern language of cinema was created by a handful of directors at this time. Certainly Coppola with The Godfather, certainly Martin Scorsese with Mean Streets, also Lucas a couple years later with Star Wars, but definitely Spielberg with Jaws. Those directors, maybe one or two others, really created the new Hollywood.
Yeah, they definitely ushered in a new era.
So Spielberg, remember, was just 28 years old, and he was the youngest person to direct a film that opened #1 at the box office. And that wasn't beaten for another 4 decades until Josh Trank when he was 27 when the movie Chronicle came out. Now, are we going to be talking about Chronicle in another 40 years? I don't think so. I mean, it was a good movie, but it was no Jaws.
When you say New Hollywood, one of the things that makes me think of is there was a leading man thing, right? But I don't think of Dreyfuss as having a classic leading man look, for example. But did he become a leading man in so many things? Yes. And I don't know if that's part of it. There was this thing where it's no, these guys who are just regular guys, they look like regular guys. They don't have the chiseled chin or whatever, whatever this classic leading man thing is. they would be, at one time would have been character actors, right?
Yeah, Robert Shaw was that. He was the leading man, chiseled jaw guy.
Yeah, yeah.
So this represents, and there was actually tension between the two of them on the set for that very reason. I think Dreyfuss had a very successful film come out right before this. I forget what it was. It kind of is the moment where that changes.
Well, they make it work on film. I feel some of the things where they don't actually quite have their act together as they're doing this thing with the shark. I definitely understand it because it's like you have one guy who's a total novice and you have two guys who are actually pretty skilled, but they are at odds with each other. So they're not cooperating. And it's just part of this is where it's not about the shark by itself. It's about humans not quite getting it right. So, I mean, because otherwise, let's face it, there's a reason why we eat sharks. Okay, that's how it normally works out, but when you set it up the way they did, it's like, yeah, no, these guys are screwed because, they just keep on getting in deeper. The whole community got themselves in deeper because of all these different other things. And yeah, you see why they made the mistakes. And it's, so often in a modern horror movie, you're like, yes, you're going to do the stupid thing instead of the smart thing. We know that's going to happen. And because you have to make the movie work. They actually show us why they're doing the wrong things, why they're not perfect. They actually give us, I mean, there's a lot going on here in reaction to this incredible danger. And it's funny because I don't have a film background, but you can find movies that will match this kind of, at least the ambition here, that will have the same ambition for their characters moving forward. And you can find other ones where like, I'm going to steal what I think is the formula and I'll be rich. Now, this is what I don't know anything about the sequels, but I want to know, did any of the primaries return for the sequels? Did anybody in the original return?
I think Roy Scheider came back for Jaws 2. That's the only sequel I watched, so I can't speak to the ones after that, but I think Scheider might have come back for it. Let me double check on that.
I didn't see where Richard Dreyfuss did on IMDb, but one thing I did see was 2 years prior to Jaws, he was in American Graffiti, which was huge.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, and then he was also in The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz, which was an Oscar-winning film.
And that's the one that had some tension with Robert Shaw. And yes, Roy Scheider did come back for Jaws 2. But I don't think he came back after that. I don't know. Jaws 3D was the next one after that, and I never bothered with it.
Yeah, that was like a whole series of 3D films that came out all around the same time. Because the film industry, I don't know, decided to bring it back.
Yeah, every time, even to this day, it just hurts my eyes, man. I'm like, no, it's okay. We'll just skip it.
I don't know what else to say. There's so many things I could talk about. I could talk about how George Lucas got his head stuck in the shark.
Richard Dreyfuss got stuck in the cage.
Yeah.
About that.
There's tons more we could talk about. The behind the scenes on this film is legendary. Like, everything went wrong. Even Spielberg didn't even show up for the last day of filming because he thought that the crew would revolt and throw him into the ocean.
I mean, did he deserve it? I don't know.
Well, considering they signed on for whatever, 50 days, and it went over 150 days, I'm sure everybody's
Right.
Yeah, but you know what? Isn't that something though? For something like that, and you're like, man, that was the worst thing ever. And then you get to say for the rest of your life that you were on that.
It's like, it was the worst experience of my life, but hey, I was on the crew of Jaws, so
yeah, no,
I got that going for me.
you honestly, that you could get a lot of jobs based on that. You get a lot of free dinners, basically. I'm sure most movie sets that are that terrible don't turn out like this. But if they do, then at least you have a good story and a hell of a thing to put on your resume.
Oh yeah.
If you like the program, please tell 2 people about it. This year we're asking you to tell 2 people, not 1, 2 people about it and spread the word. Help us succeed and keep making these. You can rate and review, give us 5 stars on whatever platform you choose to download this podcast from. And if you want to write to us, we're Geek Channel 8, basically GC8, letter G, letter C, number 8, podcast at gmail.com. Until next time, this is Eric.
This is Rosie.
And Will.
Signing off.
I'm kind of surprised. I'm like, oh, shark films. Overall, not that bad. Oh, maybe.